Andrews. So nice to see you, friend. And the East semifinals are set. You will be there. We've got on the East side, the top-seeded Sixers hosting the Hawks. Game 1, Sunday on ABC. While the Nets and Bucks, this is the rumble everyone has been looking forward to, beginning in Brooklyn on Saturday. Now, for Milwaukee, this was the round they were eliminated in by the Heat last year. They righted that wrong at the beginning of this year's playoffs. But now as they try to break through for their first finals in 47 years, Malika, what does this mean to their franchise long term?
It means a lot, Rachel, and not this individual matchup with the Nets. It's sexy. It's exciting. I'm excited to watch it. But in talking to Giannis Antetokounmpo this week, he said that this season, a difference in his approach overall is he's always been competitive, but he's really trying to zero in on putting on his blinders and just focus on himself. I'm still not sure I believe him when he said he didn't watch Game 5 between the Celtics and the Nets because, I mean, come on, he loves basketball. But he said that that's really not what he's trying to focus on. He's going to watch film. He's coming into practice. He's trying to limit some of his outside basketball. Again, this is the guy who built a gym when Bud put a lock on it. But that's the approach that they're having. And PJ Tucker said today, one thing that has impressed him the most about coming into this Bucks organization is just how much fuel they have taken from these last couple of seasons where they fell short. We've seen it over and over again. We know what this means to them. But he said that he's really been struck by how they've used that as motivation for this year. He said that Giannis was so focused on beating the Miami Heat. He was not going to let that series go. And he said that made PJ Tucker raise his intensity level. We already know he's pretty intense. They keep check marks on the board of how many games they have left to win. This is a team that is locked in, Rachel.
I don't want to overstate this.
Here we go.
But
you know when we hear that sentence. Anyway, Brian, continue.
I think this series
that's like Giannis saying he doesn't watch.
I think this series is about the future of the NBA. Because the Nets are operating like this is all about the most offense you can possibly produce. That's what they said when they basically went for Harden and said, we are going to play like the Showtime Lakers on steroids. We're going to just absolutely go as hard as we can. We're going to score 145 and good luck. And then I think the Bucks, who can put up 140 on a good night as well, don't get me wrong, have spent all of these assets on versatile defenders. Not just Drew Holiday, but as Malika mentioned, PJ Tucker. Those two trades have completely gassed their ability to control their own draft.
Right.
And they did that because they realized in the NBA, you still got to defend. You just need versatile defenders. And so, like, if the Nets just come down and just like, listen, we're going to just outplay you and outrun you, I don't see why other teams won't mimic that and just go full 1980s all over again.
Yeah, this is a big series for Milwaukee. I think they've done a good job of kind of floating under the radar. They've been the 1 seed, and that didn't work, and we found holes and critiqued. But they've added great pieces. With everyone you mentioned, Brian, also adding Bobby Portis, Bryn Forbes shooting the ball well. This is the best this Milwaukee team, in my opinion, has been playing in the past 3 or 4 years. And what I liked is they fooled around with rotations during the season, even if that may have cost them a loss or two early on. But just to understand that we have these rotations, we have guys, we could play these different combinations. So I'm willing. This is going to be a great series. I'm not sure who's going to win, but I think whoever wins this is going to represent the Eastern Conference in the finals.
Yeah, I mean, I threw out to these guys during the break, is whoever wins this the favorite for the NBA Finals, the favorite to win the title? With the way the West, so many other teams are having problems. We will find out. It will be interesting for Milwaukee, though, which really did go all in on retooling this team. At first it was, did they do enough to have Giannis resign? Well, that box got checked. But this is what they can do. And if this is not enough and they go out in the second round again, I don't know if you're Giannis and the Bucks and you go back to the drawing board and yet another offseason. I just don't know what else you can say besides, hey, we ran into some pretty bad luck here. Malika, when you talk about the Nets side of things, how much do you think they took away from their Celtics series? I was at one of those games, and, I mean, the Celtics were depleted. It was kind of hard to get a sense in the game I was at of really where the Nets were.
Yeah, well, and Steve Nash has said, Rachel, that, look, we just had to play the team that was in front of us. So, yes, we understand that they were depleted, but that wasn't something he said, we're missing Jeff Green. You know, things happen, right? But what the Nets are taking out of that series is they just had more time together on the floor to try to build that chemistry that they've been trying to get all season. They've still only played 13 games with the big three all together. And so to have that additional 5 games, that's what was important to them. Yes, this is a team where those big three have combined for 20 27 All-Star selections. But this is also, you mentioned, both Matt and Brian mentioned a case of offense versus defense a little bit, although the Bucks have a big three offensively of their own a little bit. They've averaged over 85 points per game. Jrue Holiday, Chris Middleton, and Giannis Antetokounmpo against the Nets this season. But what I'm also looking at, instead of just the offense versus the defense, I'm also looking at experience versus not. 2 years ago, when the Bucks lost to Toronto, they said, we're trying to overcome a lack of experience. That's the boat the Nets are in right now, whereas the Bucks have this waterlog of experiences and adversities that they've gone through together.
Yeah, and look, it's going to be fascinating. That doesn't mean there isn't a series on the other side, though, and we have the Sixers who advance despite Joel Embiid's absence with that meniscus tear. Brian has said it many times, there's no minor knee surgery, there's no minor knee tears. They're calling it a small tear. I don't know how small it is when it's your knee. The Hawks, meanwhile, winning their first series since 2016 with that victory over the Knicks. So with Embiid's injury looming, Matt, which player do you think is going to make the biggest difference? If it's not Joel Embiid, is it Ben Simmons on the Sixers side, or is it Trae Young on the Hawks side?
I think it's Trae Young to continue his energy and stellar play, not only scoring the ball, but getting his teammates involved. And similar to the AD situation, Embiid is someone who's been injury prone, particularly with knees. So to me, it's going to have surgery at some point. Do you really risk that right now? Obviously, this team is playing well. They're the 1 seed. They have championship aspirations. But again, does the risk, outweigh the reward? Similar with Anthony Davis. I mean, we're saying that's small, but any injury to these type of guys who have been injury prone is not small. So err on the side of caution. But to answer your question, Trae Young's energy is going to be the key to this series.
I think Ben Simmons, because of Trae Young, because Trae Young was the difference maker in that series against the Knicks. And that means that, Ben Simmons is going to, his size and his versatility. Scott Brooks last night, the series is over. There's no more reason to pump up the opponent. Scott Brooks, he's the defensive player of the year. I voted for Rudy Gobert, but I understand why he's saying that. And so let's see what the defensive player of the year by Scott Brooks' standards can do on this force, who is a massive focus in this series.
Is that going to be Ben Simmons is almost 7 feet tall and Trae Young is tiny. That's going to be incredible. And that really just speaks
That's
to
why
his
they
point.
have him.
That's going to speak to this point. If he can slow down Trae Young at his size, people don't understand how big Ben Simmons is and then how small and fast Trae is in real life.
No, it's
so,
true. Yes, well, first of all, no one is small to me. So I just want to say, you are saying he's small compared to you from your height.
NBA standards.
Right? But Malika, we do hear all the time Ben making the point, hey, I can guard 1 through 5. And in fact, that was his argument in the Defensive Player of the Year discussion, comparing himself to Rudy Gobert. What do you think about this series and which player we should watch besides Joel, obviously?
Obviously, seeing Ben Simmons have that big Game 5, that was so important for this Philadelphia team. It's going to be, as these gentlemen have said, it's going to be Trae Young versus Ben Simmons, even if it's not always a head-to-head matchup. But I will say that when Trae Young is bowing in the Garden, saying the curtain is closed, I know what happens at the shows in this town on that big of a stage, he's got some swagger. I know he hasn't been there before, but he looks like he has a little bit of sauce to his step right now heading into this series. Philadelphia, we know, still has statistically the easiest path to the conference finals and are the favorites in this series. But it's going to be really interesting when Trae Young is flying that high, when Clint Capella is literally calling people out and saying, we're going to come to your house, we're going to come to your town and beat you. When they're riding on that level, I don't know.
It's not going to be easy.
His exact words were, I'm going to send you on vacation, which was tremendous. And in fact, it turned out to be prophetic. Amazing. I am interested to see what the crowd is going to be like in Philadelphia.
Hey, they booed Santa Claus, remember. Philly booed Santa Claus, so you think the Knicks crowd is bad. Philly doesn't play either.
Well, I think it's a great environment. Philly has had that incredible home court environment the last couple years, and we've seen arenas ramp up their attendance. We'll see if that happens in Pennsylvania. Malika, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you again soon. Everyone else stick with us, because coming up, we're going to talk about Nikola Jokic. His Nuggets held off Dame time.